What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Wild, episode 50, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name's Meowth, and as usual, I'm joined by my two good friends, Roffle and Corbett. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. Another fun week of Hearthstone, and no more Stealer of Souls, so pretty happy about that. That's definitely improved my ladder experience for the week. How about you, Corbett?
Yeah, it's all good. Pretty happy with Hearthstone stuff in general. At the time of the recording, the recent Masters Tour has just started, so I mean, by the time this comes out, it'll be probably pretty deep into that. But I always enjoy watching the Masters Tours and things like that for standard Hearthstone. So yeah, really enjoying it and happy with the Stealer and everything going on like that.
There's something satisfying I find about just like watching casted Hearthstone, and so like it's just something that's I enjoy throwing on in the background. Plus, free packs on YouTube, so.
Well, it's a perfect segue for some other casted Hearthstone that's going to be happening this weekend. If you guys don't know already, there will be a huge wild tournament that's happening this weekend over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/getmeout. The three of us will be casting. It's going to be a good time. By the time this episode comes out, it will have concluded, so it is a little bit too late to enter. But if you guys want to check out the actual production and the tournament itself and see who won, or find any of the list, you can find the VOD over on the Twitch channel. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a long day, but looking forward to seeing, the first competitive Hearthstone. I mean, we don't really get a lot of competitive Hearthstone, but this is like the first time we're getting competitive Hearthstone post Forged in the Barrens without Stealer. So it's going to be fun to see, what the best players have kind of, done and thought up when it comes to these spicy wild lineups. But yeah, so let's dive into our episode. We got to take care of our usual housekeeping things first. So the first thing, just a reminder to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys enjoy the content. It's a small thing, whether you're listening on podcast or the YouTube channel itself. It's a small thing, but it does support us a ton.
In addition to that, we'd like to thank our newest Patreons for this week. At the rare tier, we have Andrew Baranyai and Anthony Gomez. So thank you both for helping support the podcast.
Yeah, and as patrons, you can of course link your Patreon and Discord accounts when you come and join the podcast Discord server. That is open to everyone, however, so come join in if you enjoy the podcast, you want to come interact with the community and all of the wild Hearthstone players. Come join, come hang out. It's a good place.
Yeah, and this wouldn't be the 50th episode without us doing something a little bit special. It's really hard for us, we were talking about this before when we were planning the episode, it's really hard for us to go back and top like the XR episode. And so we're going to try. We're going to do something small, right? We're going to be doing some giveaways. We're going to be giving away some wild packs. So if you guys want to find out how you can enter that giveaway, make sure you guys stay tuned until the end of the episode. We'll give you some details then. All right. So let's hop into some Hearthstone news. Roffle already alluded to this earlier. Stealer Souls got banned on Wednesday. Pretty big change, right? Obviously the first ban. We talked about this last week. And so now we've finally gotten to experience the wild meta post Wailing Caverns. It's only been a couple days, as we're recording this, but what are y'all's first impressions? What's Wailing Caverns' impact been on the WoW format?
It's been a very familiar metagame. I think this is kind of as we predicted and what we, discussed even before Stealer Souls was released. Things were kind of reverting back to this just as a result of the nerfs. So Forged in the Barrens was a high impact expansion, so much so that a lot of stuff ended up getting nerfed, which brings us back, I think, to where we were beforehand. So I've been seeing a lot of Secret Mage. Priest feels like it's a class again. That's been one of the most notable things is that, Anduin's no longer afraid to come out because of all of the Stealer Souls nonsense. So, we got to maybe experience a little bit of the delete priest dream. I hated it. That's not necessarily a result of priest doing anything, but the alternative it wasn't great either. So we're back to having some priest, and it kind of feels like you can play decks that make it past turn 7 or so, or intend to play past turn 7 or so. So. I've been enjoying myself. Again, I'm hopeful that upcoming expansions are somewhere in between the Forged in the Barrens and what we've had in the past, where maybe not necessarily as they're too strong to where they get reeled in, and we end up, right where we are now, but maybe not, as just kind of objectively broken as some of the archetypes that were born out of Fortune of the Barons or were amplified by Fortune of the Barons were.
Yeah, there is this reverting like you're talking about, and the Steeler Warlock nerf has made things like Priest a lot more playable, and so that's come back a lot stronger. There is kind of one exception though, and that is Shaman, where Shaman, fun fact, at Diamond, Shaman is now the second most popular class since the Steeler nerfs happened, and it's been the third most since the mini set as a whole. And at Legend, since the Steeler Warlock change or the ban. Shaman is the most popular class.
Let's go.
Beats out Warlock. It beats out Warlock by 0.2% currently. So it is right there. It has 18.9% representation at Legend right now, based on the VS sample of games, which is nuts. Like, Shaman is the most popular class. There's so much experimentation going on with Shaman, with different shells, with Shutterwalk, Reno, Galakrond, all this kind of stuff, all built around the elementals, and the Dungeoneer and the Flurgle Toxfin package. And I think that is the big thing that we are going to keep on experimenting with, and that's the big change that we're going to be seeing from this mini set as a whole.
Yeah, I was about to say, it feels like Shaman's the only thing that got anything from the Wailing Caverns, right? That wasn't Stealer of Souls, and so it kind of makes sense why it's so popular. I'd be really interested in, like, a couple of weeks, once people have figured out what's good and what's not, and how to beat Shaman that's super popular. I wonder if it stays at a super high popularity and a super high power level. And I hope it does, because, man, I have missed playing Shaman. I love Shaman. It gets to do so much random cool things, right? Like, what I love in a class is the fact that it, like, can do a whole variety of things, which is why I don't like Priest. It only does the one thing in Wild, right? Or I guess two, Arena Priest and Big Priest. Shaman, just with Primal Dungeoneer, you can have, like, 6 or 7 different decks, and they all have different strategies and win cons, and I love it, and it's amazing. And it doesn't, I don't know, Flurgle Talks might feel a little bit unfair to play against, but the rest of the Shaman shell, like, it doesn't feel bad to play against or like lose to. We can maybe talk about Flurgle Talks in a little bit later, but yeah, I am not mad that Shaman's super popular. I'm not frustrated playing against it, which I think is a really good sign when it comes to a popular deck archetype.
I think it's got a couple things going for it right now. There's the novelty of it, right? It's been a while since Shaman has had anything like even Murloc Shaman is a fairly new deck that was really born out of Fortune of the Barons. So there's still some novelty associated with that. But with the Battlecry Elemental type. It really just Dungeoneer decks. I think we can probably call them. There's a lot of novelty associated with that, which, as we talked about in previous weeks, even just with that card being released, there's a lot of refinement going on. So there's kind of exploration involved in the archetype, which really makes it fun to play. We don't know what the optimal list is, and we've been talking about that for a while. Is it going towards the Galakrond package? Is it a Reno Shaman? Are both perfectly viable shells? And yeah, I think it's exciting to have in an Eternal format where so much is kind of like static, just as a nature of like the length of time when cards or archetypes are in existence. Like, I always go back to something like the old Exodia Mage, where it's like, okay, Research Project got released. Obviously, you throw that in as your card draw. So it's like you get new cards, but there's no refinement exploration. It's just like, okay, this card good, put it in deck, and then deck better now. So like the with Shaman, there's a different feeling associated with it because we don't know. There's unknown associated with it.
Yeah, and that is just because it has been so long, right? Until these types of archetypes since these types of archetypes have been really playable. This has been such an information gap as we've kind of gotten all these new tools, but no one's ever really been using them very much. So we just don't know. And you're right, that is really exciting. Shaman is a class, though, that I think is just generally a little bit hard to figure out right now, like even beside the fact that it's new. There's a lot of Shaman refinement going on in Standard as well right now, so it's both formats seem to be going through the same sort of process. But yeah, it's gotten a lot of attention. Like I said, it's relatively unrefined I would say. And so the fact that it is this popular, the fact that the win rates are this high, and the fact that, like Meowth said, it doesn't tend to feel that bad to lose to. With we'll get into some of the other stuff, the Toxfin Flurgle perhaps. But I'm very happy with this kind of more mid-rangey style, and it just feels different compared to a lot of what the other things in Wild are currently doing, or like what are the other decks and archetypes currently do.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about Flurgle Talks. Okay, we've been alluding to this. Let's go ahead and move our conversation this route. One of the reasons Primal Dungeoneer has kind of completely revitalized Shaman and Wild is the fact that you can have this ability to draw ice fishing, which was already super powerful in our format because you had Flurgle Toxfin that got introduced in Forge in the Barrens. And the consistency of that combo now giving you a one-sided board clear, kind of not on demand, but kind of also on demand, is part of the reason why Shaman as a whole is so strong, and you can just shove it in literally any archetype, right? Aggressive decks, mid-range decks, control decks, arena decks. It's just the package of cards goes in everything. I do want to touch on Flurgle Talks in a couple ways. The first thing, I feel like this is going to be the next thing that people are going to complain about. We were complaining about Darkglare for a million years. Penflinger got nerfed. It kind of went away. Now it's back. Maybe we can talk about Darkglare as well. And then Stealer Souls came out. Everybody was complaining about that. And now I feel like the community is going to be looking for this next thing to complain about. And I just have this feeling that Flurgle Talks is going to be that, because it's, I don't know, man. It's a one-sided board wipe for 3 mana that you can tutor is just obscenely powerful.
It's carrying an entire class right now. I think the only like reasonable comparison is maybe like Skipper Barov, which didn't really get a whole lot of complaints, and even though you could tutor the skippers with Ankar, but that's only half of the pieces. So it's basically just becomes a more consistent version of that, with in something like a full Murloc deck the potential to not only make it a one-sided board clear, but a repetitive one-sided board clear. If you're able to play additional Murlocs behind it, which we'll talk about that as in the future as well. But it's definitely stronger than Skipper Barov as a result of like ice fishing. I don't know what the solution is though. So other than maybe just not fully committing it into Shaman, which it has downsides on of its own. So, but it's kind of interesting that you get so much value off of ice fishing that you're not like, you're happy when you get a low value Primal Dungeoneer hit, right? Like because you get so much cards off the back end that you're just like, okay, I drew a frost spell. Let's keep it rolling. So.
Yeah, I have it pinned in my Discord, the prediction, which is that in 6 to 8 weeks, the community is going to be just completely molding, just losing their mind about this whole Flurgle Toxfin on the Reddit posts and the Twitter posts and things like that. Yeah, so this like combination of cards is obviously obscenely powerful. It's one of the absolute most powerful things you can do in Wild, which is kind of crazy. And it is highly, highly consistent, right, with the Primal Dungeoneer, because you run a deck that only runs maybe 3 spells or something like that. Where you have the ice fishing and then a couple of your key cards, whether those like Tidal Surges in slower Shaman decks or Invocation of Frost in Galakrond. Maybe you go up to like a 5th spell, 4th, 5th, but either way, you keep this very consistent package. And it means that, this combination coming up by turn 5 happens all the time. I personally don't really have that much of a problem with it at all, really. Like, I'm fine there being powerful things in this format. And I'm fine with it being Shaman as well. It is sort of carrying the class a bit right now. But again, Shaman's been so long sort of in the dumpster that I think the moment, like, this interaction has existed for a while. And just because Shaman's kind of like good now doesn't mean I'm suddenly going to be like, well, bans? Blizzard bans? Can we get Flurgle banned in our format? No, I think it's fine. And I think that overall, hopefully it keeps promoting a diverse set of archetypes within the Shaman class. Because, maybe having a very powerful answer to multiple 8/8s on turn 4 isn't the worst thing in the world in the meta.
True.
I mean, maybe multiple giants on turn 4 in the meta is a problem in and of its own that we need to address, but I'm totally okay with Virgo Toxin being a thing. I don't know. It just kind of makes sense that Shaman, the board control class, has one of the best like board control packages, right? In Foliage Talks, and like I said, it doesn't even feel that bad to lose to because it's like, yeah, it's a board wipe, but then it's a 3 health Murloc, right? And most decks have the ability to clear that. I say most.
It's still novel as well.
Yeah.
Like, so it doesn't feel that bad because it's like new.
Yeah,
like there have been Murloc Shaman decks, but it wasn't, on demand as much. So.
There are times too where it's kind of telegraphed as well, just like by the nature of the ice fishing. So, if you see your opponent playing ice fishing and you dump your hand, that's kind of on you. So there is a degree of predictability with it where you can better play around it, and I think that makes for interesting decisions in a card game.
Well, there's the argument that maybe you shouldn't play around it because maybe your opponent is doing this thing that we talked about last week where they're running Mutanus and they're running 3 Murlocs in their deck instead of 2. So last week, flashback, Corbett was asking, he's like, I want to do the math and see, how bad is running 3 Murlocs. Somebody beat Corbett to the punch, and I feel really weird quoting. I feel really weird quoting Reddit. Okay.
This is a fantastic post, though.
Yes.
Just across the board, the information was good. It was well written, and it was a great post.
Yeah, I don't know any of the math behind this. I do not know what a Monte Carlo is, but I trust the fact that they know what this is and they knew how to run the simulation. In God, I don't even remember the program that they used, MATLAB, which is like they're using words that I recognize, so I trust the post. Okay, but whether I should or not, maybe, I don't know. But basically, the conclusion here, we'll drop the link down in the description if you guys want to get the full read. But essentially, if you're only running 2 Murlocs, if you're only running the Foliage Talks, the likelihood that you have Ice Fishing and Foliage Talks in your hand on turn 5 is 40%. The moment you introduce Mutanus into the equation, your likelihood of drawing the Foliage Talks combo decreases by 10%. And so the question becomes, is that 10 to 11% deficit that you're gaining, or you're losing, I guess, because you're running Mutanus, being made up with Mutanus winning you games? I highly doubt Mutanus is swinging your percentage by 11%. Mutanus should not be in your decks with Foliage Talks, right? Because it is making the most powerful thing you can do in your class in this format less consistent, which I think is a very big deal.
Right. So a few considerations. This is specifically I don't think it matters that much, but this is specifically for a Reno Shaman deck. So not that you're going to be running, duplicates of Flurgle, obviously, or Ice Fishing when you're only running a handful of Murlocs. And we say Mutanus, it could mean literally any other Murloc as well. It's just your third Murloc significantly reduces the consistency of the Ice Fishing. I think that there are a few additional considerations that were brought up in the post itself as well, and this is something that we've talked about. That that decrease is basically drawing that that combination of Murlocs in the early turns, so that 10 or 11% is by a certain point. Now, obviously, against Dark Glare Warlock aggressive decks, you need it earlier, and so one consideration that's being posed in something that we discussed even prior to this post going out and in past episodes is where Mutanus shines is obviously not in those aggro matchups, but also probably not in the combo matchups as well. It was brought up that if it becomes a more Reno heavy metagame, it might be worth that decrease in percentages against aggro if you're gaining something against those value-based Reno decks. Now, we're a far cry from that type of slow metagame, so I think we can probably agree that running Mutanus is probably not giving you the best chance of winning games of Hearthstone. But as the author of this post said, I actually can't tell you not to run Mutanus because I've been having fun with them, and big same. So, I'm okay losing games just to eat some minions into my opponent's hand, but I recognize that it's probably not optimal for the current wild landscape.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the post also accounts for Primal Dungeoneer, being able to tutor the ice fishing and whether that changes anything at all. But yeah, so basically though, when reading through, my main takeaway was, okay, so we've been shown the math. It probably means that Mutanus isn't good enough. Just because that decrease does seem like a little bit too significant. Again, it's kind of mostly eyeballing things and going, oh, does this feel right? Is that enough percentage that we lose? Like, there's no real math behind it. Aside from just seeing what the odds are and saying, this is good enough. And I think like that loss of percentage is too much, and so I'd probably just go to that double Murloc deck, which is the Foliage Talks. The Mutanus though in particular is really good in the mirror. If you want to play like Shadowwalk mirrors, the Mutanus is very strong there. So I mean maybe it'll just be like a counter to Shaman once Shaman overtakes Dark Lair and things like that. As is bound to happen in a week or
What
two.
a dream
right?
world that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We talked last week about this like equivalence to Ticketus, and it feels very same. And like, well, it hurts your matchups against aggro. Are you okay giving up those percentages against aggro for the percentages that you're gaining against lower decks? And the thing to me is, I think Reno locks can kind of get by with that a little bit easier because they're Reno decks and they're Warlock decks, where the ice fishing package, like we've been talking about, is like the most powerful thing Shaman can do in our format. And like it is single-handedly resurrecting the class in combination with Primal Engineer, and so making that combo of cards less consistent just feels like just feels so incorrect to me. Like yes, if you're queuing to a bunch of Shadowwalk mirrors, all power to you. If you're not trying to play an optimal deck and you just love munching away in your opponent's hand, all power to you. But like competitively optimizing a deck, I cannot in good conscience say that like Mutanus has any place in the Shaman decks. I just can't.
Yeah.
No.
I was very impressed though playing against Mutanus, moving away from Shaman just short like quickly. Playing against an Odd Warrior. I met a number of Odd Warriors that were running Mutanus, and I thought it was actually very quite strong there. And also some Reno locks. There was a Reno lock that I played against multiple times, and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty impressive. It does just really body those slower matchups. Like it is really impressive in like the Reno mirrors in particular.
Roffle was
Yeah,
right. Roffle was right.
It's well, yeah, it's good. It's good for managing hand advantage. You can do that a couple of ways. I mean, this goes back to my preference in playing mono black control in MTG. Like you can either do that by drawing cards yourself or by removing cards from your opponent's hand to gain card advantage. And so I think that we need to maybe stop looking at Mutanus as a combo disruptor and more as a value late game disruptor. And yeah, I think that the more I think about it, the more I think that comparison to Ticketus is apt, where you are giving up significant game against aggro because of the void color, downside in the same way that you are with Mutanus and the ice fishing. But I think the reason people get hung up on it so much is like what is more memorable when of an outcome when you play these types of cards. When you chow down on your opponent's win condition or blow up 5 cards that they needed for their combo, or when you get stuck with this card in hand that for the first 3 turns and your opponent just steamrolls you with with an aggressive start, you probably just move on from that and don't really blame the card that's sitting in your hand, even though it could very well be at fault. I think it'll be more noticeable in Shaman decks just by nature of when you pull an ice fishing and miss the one of the board clear combos, you're going to notice that and you're going to remember that. So I think it'll be maybe a little bit more of a deterrent in Reno Shaman, but I think eventually, yeah, it's probably going to fall out of favor unless things slow down significantly. It was interesting reading this post and seeing like some of the math line up with what we had kind of figured was the case intuitively, but it's it's good to get confirmation on that because some things that are intuitive end up being wrong. So I appreciate that somebody took the time to work this out.
So let's move on to talking a little bit more big picture. I don't want to use the word tier list because I know that has a scary connotation with some people. So I just want to talk kind of just general feelings about the meta. I know we've only had a couple days since Stealer got nerfed, and I know it's only been a few weeks since the mini set came out as a whole. But just kind of general impressions. What are the top power level decks? The decks to beat. I know we got Dark Lair and Secret Mage. I know everybody loves to hate those decks, and everybody already knows to hate those. But are there other things that people should be keeping an eye on, when they're building their decks, or if they're trying to hit high legend ranks?
Well, I think that we've talked about this in the past, but I think the ones that come up for me with decks that people should be playing but never are kind of the Baku decks, like the aggressive Baku decks. That is that like they're not exciting. They haven't changed a whole lot, but they're just solid decks. So Odd Paladin, Odd Rogue, and even Odd Demon Hunter are probably worth considering right now, even without the ability to, for some of those more aggressive ones, to bully the Steel or Souls decks. They're still just solid decks. The consistency of an upgraded hero power cannot be overstated, and it's just they're just good decks, but like they're kind of samey, so people are less likely to play them. Pirate Warrior probably falls into that category as well. Secret Mage to a lesser extent, but I think people like it's been the top dog in many people's minds for so long that like it still has like the clarity of the community of it being a very strong deck. I don't know what it is that's different about Secret Mage compared to some of those other decks when they're comparable in terms of power level for sure, especially something like Odd Paladin and maybe even Pirate Warrior. One thing that I've been noticing, I'm not sure necessarily about the consistency of it, but I've been really intrigued by the just full aggro Pirate Rogue. It really gets on you quickly. It doesn't have the it doesn't require the setup that maybe a Kingsman does, so it doesn't necessarily have the same explosiveness over the course of the game, but it really gets on you quickly. I'm curious to see how that lines up. I don't know how to evaluate that deck because when I'm playing something silly, it just kind of steamrolls me, so that biases the outcome a little bit. I don't know if it's going to be able to keep pace with some of those decks that I mentioned that better manage the board state, like an Odd Paladin or even a Pirate Warrior can probably out pressure it. So that's a deck I've been keeping an eye on, and but I'm not sure exactly how to evaluate it right now, just because I haven't played it, and I haven't played a deck that like is intending to beat it. So I would tend to defer to you guys in terms of evaluating the standing of certain decks about what's working in the metagame. So I'll pass things on to either you or Corb now.
Yeah, so I think there are the main three. You hit on two of them that stand out to me: is Secret Mage, Dark Lair, and the third one would be Odd Paladin. I think Odd Paladin is the other deck that, even though it's not quite as popular, I think those are the three like very established archetypes that the best right now. I think Pirate Warrior is also very, very good, particularly if you're perhaps in the like climb to legend in the diamond or at a 10 times MMR, like that kind of range, because it is really good against Secret Mage, and Secret Mage is more popular at that rank bracket. But yeah, Pirate Warrior is really good as well. So those are like the big like 3 to 4, I would say. There's a lot of other decks though that are either underplayed, people might not realize they're quite good, or have been benefiting a lot from the Stealer Warlock, and so it's a little bit hard to judge. For example, Odd Demon Hunter has been fantastic since the mini set came out, because it beat Stealer Warlocks really, really badly. So we'll see how that ends up playing out, though, without that Stealer Warlock to farm on. There's also a lot of the Shaman stuff. The Shaman decks look like they have borderline tier 1 win rates, right? And they're very unrefined. I don't actually understand how they're winning this much. But the HS replay stuff that we have, and like the other stats that we can look at, the win rate for Shaman decks in general is just insanely high, and I don't really understand, and we'll see in what that direction goes. There's also some other ones like Even Hunter. Even Hunter's another deck much like Odd Demon Hunter, which it's not necessarily the best, but it's been very, very good so far, and a lot better than people might think. And we'll see if that plays out as, you know, the meta changes and things without Stealer Warlock. But yeah, those are the big three. And then there's Pirate Warrior and the, you know, a whole bunch of decks that I think are underplayed but pretty solid. And we'll see where things go. Arena Priest is going to get better. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's just kind of bubbling in like that tier 2, right? Tier 2 kind of range, whether that's Odd Rogue or the Scimitar Rogue, which Roffle mentioned. But yeah, that's kind of my general feel of things right now, and we'll see how things develop.
Yeah, the only decks that I want to add on to that, Kingsman Rogue has kind of finally, you know, finished its refinement, I guess, because everybody's like playing very similar lists, save like 1 or 2 cards. I know people are on that Blade Flurry train, but that feels really, really good. I love that you mentioned Even Hunter. Loving that deck for a very long time. Big fan of Even Hunter. And I do think that Arena Priest, you know, will be making a comeback. It picks on a lot of these decks that we have mentioned. You know, it does still lose to Glare. It's still like slightly unfavorable against Mage, but it's pretty good against a lot of these other aggressive decks that we've been mentioning. So just keep an eye out on that as well. I do want to kind of extend this question. Do you guys think that there are decks that are being like significantly overplayed by people right now, that now that Stealer of Souls has been banned, you know, we probably shouldn't be playing it? Or maybe not even related to Stealer of Souls, like just don't have insanely high win rates from what we're seeing, and so, you know, besides fun factor, probably shouldn't be playing it.
I really can't think of anything, to be honest.
Okay.
I think that there really isn't too much like tier 3, tier 4 kind of stuff that's seeing a ton of play right now, or like something that looks significantly disproportionate. The wild player base has been very effective for a while now at actually playing the good stuff. Like we've mentioned this in previous reports that we've done for Vicious Syndicate, where often the like 6 or 7 or 8 most played decks happen to be like 6 or 7 or 8 best decks. And so nothing really jumps out to me as a deck that is significantly overplayed. There's still stuff like Alignment Druid and, I don't know, Mizaki is here and there, but they're not like huge portions of the meta at all. Like Odd Warrior as well. Like they're mostly just sort of niche picks that don't make up that much of ladder. So no, I think the player base in general have been pretty accurate and pretty good at picking up what the good stuff is. Even if some of the absolute best stuff is still underplayed, like Odd Pally and Glare and so on.
Yeah, I think that the closest thing that I've been, or the most popular jank I've been seeing has been like Reno Shamans, but it turns out that's just a good deck, and so like,
yeah,
it's just good. So yeah, people are playing it. I have seen a fair, like I obviously play at different ranks than the two of you, but like I have seen a noticeable decline in those, as you mentioned, Alignment and Mizaki Mage, just because I don't think that they have the best matchups in the metagame right now. I think that people are still maybe like reluctantly dipping their toes back into Priest, and if we see some more Priests come up, those decks might start returning. So I think that when Priest is deleted as an archetype, you lose the decks that beat it too. So it's not just the loss of Priest that you're mourning when Stealer of Souls is ending games on turn 4. So
yeah, I will say one deck that people should not be playing, and I feel personally responsible for this just because I've put out a couple tweets and videos about this deck, and Aggro Shaman. I think that's like the one Shaman deck that is complete and total bait. I had an obscenely high win rate with the deck when I initially started playing it. I did mention that it was probably because I was queuing into a ton of Stealer Warlocks. And it turns out it was 100% because I was queuing into a ton of Stealer Warlocks, because post-patch, the deck kind of sucks against anything else that's aggressive. And so it feels really, really, I don't know, it's very high rolly, right? Like you have those explosive openers and you can just absolutely decimate a lot of decks. But the moment you don't have that, or you queue into something like an Odd Paladin that has, you know, Broomstick, or has a Pirate Warrior that has Cannon, then you're just losing the game, which feels kind of really bad. So I take responsibility for that. I'll own up to that. But yeah, you guys should not be playing Aggro Shaman. It feels like it still needs a couple more tools to come back to its former glory.
it turns out a deck that looks to end the game on turn 4 benefits from a a deck that doesn't do anything for the first 4 turns. So
Turns out.
Yeah, I think there's still a little bit of room to go with Aggro Shaman, where like I think there is the current builds that are out there aren't amazing.
Thanks, dude. Way to
and
shout
part of
me
it,
out. Okay, cool. I see how it is.
yeah. Hey. I also played Aggro Shaman to success temporarily. But I think that like in general, things like Zapper just aren't very good in the deck. And they haven't performed very well. Things like Lightning Bloom, which is something else that people have been playing. So those cards are probably not great. And I think that the biggest issue I had with the Aggro Shaman was that like it just ran out of stuff very, very, very quickly. And I think there might be something to like a slightly higher curve, like something that was more like even ran up to like the lily pad potentially. Maybe we can take some inspiration from some of the standard decks that curve up to like fire elemental. Because I think like some of the early game shaman stuff is still pretty disgusting. Like some of the like kindling elemental, the new what do we call it again? Elemental worm. The 1/3. Like some of those openers are still really great. It's just the deck kind of just gets gassed out and just dies like a priest and can't beat Reno Jackson, things like that. So maybe with a bit more, value, maybe there's a way to do it. But,
I have been messing around with a list that runs Thunderheads and Vicinas, and it's like more mid-rangey because it like goes for like turn 5, turn 6 kills. And it's felt better than the Aggro Shaman, but it also like has this issue where it doesn't beat Reno Jackson, right? Very similar to like Even Hunter kind of vibes, where it's like the moment they play Reno, you play against the Reno deck, you're kind of just like auto-conceding a lot of the time. And it still has that issue with refill. But I do agree there is room for refinement, but it also feels like it's still missing like one or two really, really powerful cards to give me a reason to play Aggro Shaman over like one of the other 5 or 6 really, really good Shaman archetypes we have right now. Just because it also feels like that's like, honestly, we should probably be playing Foliage Talks in that deck, like real talk. But it also is like the one deck that's not running it, so maybe that's part of the issue.
I was gonna say the thing that deck is missing is ice fishing, and the combo associated with that is that like that's again that we just keep going back to that. That's the broken thing Shaman has right now.
All right, so let's wrap things up. Let's move on to our last segment of the episode. Let's talk about our decks of the week. Of course, we had to bring back this segment because we just had a brand new patch and we have a brand new metagame. We have a Shaman metagame. So let's talk about our 3 decks. We promise they're not all Shaman, even if it's going to seem like it. So I'll go ahead and start off with kind of a mid-rangey Galakrond Shaman. So this list was heavily inspired by Martian and Romanu. I think we ultimately came to like the same 30 cards. And so this deck plays just the pretty strong elemental early game with stuff like Kindling Elemental, Wailing Vapor, Cage Match Custodian into Whack-A-Null, and then you have the Arid Stormer. Man, this combination of like Kindling Elemental on 1 into like Arid Stormer on 2 has very strong like it just bodies a lot of it bodies a lot of aggro decks. It's a very, very strong combination of cards. And then I'll go ahead and run through the list for you guys. So we got double Firefly, double Invocation of Frost, double Kindling Elemental, 1 Toxin, double Wailing Vapor, double Cage Match, double Earthen Might, Firemancer Flurgle, Ice Fishing, double Stormer, double Dungeoneer, double Portal, double Hammer, Zentimo, Kazakis, Golem Shaper, Corrupt Elementalist, 2 of those, Lotheb, Galakrond, and Shutterwalk. So the one thing that you guys might be noticing, I know we've talked a lot about Dungeoneer is really, really powerful if you're running a small number of spells that you can kind of tutor the Ice Fishing. I took this inspiration from Martian. We're running 7 spells, but the Earthen Mites and the Serpent Shrine Portals in combination with Zentimo are just like absolutely insane, as well as just being like solid cards when you're running a bunch of elementals in your deck in a more mid-rangey style. And then obviously you have like the Zentimo Invocation of Frost combination. So whether this is better than like just running like Devoted Maniacs and Dragons packs and stuff like that, I'm not sure, but it's sure a lot of fun. And the amount of like surprise damage you can get from Zentimo Earthen Mites is pretty sick, right? I've had some turns where you go Zentimo Invocation of Frost on 3 minions, and then you like Earthen Might the 3 elementals you get, and then it's beautiful, it's amazing. But yeah, the deck's a lot of fun to play. It's just mid-range Shaman, really, honestly, is what it is. and it does the broken thing, right? Ice fishing into Foliage Talks, but it does a lot of other broken stuff with the elementals themselves. And then Kazakis is the card that I'm still like, God, I can't get like a good feeling on whether the card is good and wild or not. You know, it just I like the Kazakis, and the board buff from the 5-drop golem that you get is like absolutely disgusting in this deck because you're so good at having board. But I still don't know if it's like the nuts or not. But I've had a lot of fun playing this deck. I had a 15-6 score, so that's like a 70% win rate in Legend with it. So it's performing. It's doing really, really well. And again, I want to shout outs to Martian and Romano, who kind of came up with this, and I stole it and did my own little twist on it. So
yeah, it's like you said, that Kindling Elemental into Arid Stormer just feels like it wins games, but then you follow that up with the Whack-A-Null, and oh my god, there's just no coming back from that. That's one of the best feelings with these types of decks. I played something similar even early on within the Barons, and yeah, it's pretty nutty. All right, so I guess we'll go into my list next, which is also a Shaman deck. This time
surprise.
a little. Yeah, I did mention last week that I cannot stop myself from playing Shaman, but this is a little bit goofier, although I did have a reasonable win rate with the deck. But I'll go through the cards to start things off. So it's got double Armor Vendor, a copy of Corrupt the Waters, Glacial Shard, double Tour Guide, sorry, 2 Glacial Shards, double Tour Guide, single Toxfin, double Devolve, Firemancer Flurgle, a single Ice Fishing, double Sandstorm Elemental, double Healing Rain, double Primal Dungeoneer, a single Tidal Surge, Zola the Gorgon, double Serenite Chain Gang, double South Sea Scoundrel, a Lotheb, a Talon Fordring, Grumble, 1 Unseen Saboteur, Mutanus the Devourer, of course, and Shudderwalk at the top end. So the idea behind this deck is to essentially torture the opponent is really the end goal. But given the fact that it does have Dungeoneer, Ice Fishing, Flurgle, Toxfin, even with the third Murloc, I did just win games against aggro with that. I had a little bit more stall with things like Healing Rain, as well as even Tidal Surge was surprisingly good. I was kind of skeptical of running that many spells, but the new Tidal Surge is pretty good. Like, it is a significant increase in being able to consistently draw that off of the Dungeoneer in times when you needed it was helpful. So you've got that clears against aggro. Again, you can heal up to stall a little bit before going in on your full board clear with the Flurgle Toxin. But then at the top end, the idea is to assemble a South Sea Scoundrel, which you have 2 of, so it shouldn't be that hard, as well as the Unseen Saboteur and Mutanus, to essentially draw the opponent cards and then immediately either remove them from hand by chowing down on them with Mutanus or playing them with Unseen Saboteur. You do have a little bit of control over it in terms of the spells that you're playing with the Saboteur. I will say, deck probably did get worse when I added the South Sea Scoundrel, just because like the speed at which decks can play cards in Wild is pretty absurd. So giving Pirate Warrior, for example, cards wasn't always the best idea. So that's kind of a goofy inclusion, but it did feel good. Not only wiping an entire Big Priest board with the Flurgle Toxfin, but then preventing them from being able to develop behind that by just eating the minions from their hand repeatedly with the Mutanus. So I think I was playing at like the Diamond 2-1 band and maintained a 62% win rate with the deck. So again, a lot of that was just playing the good cards and winning that way. So like a defensive Shaman deck with the on-demand board clear is pretty good. And then I had some late game shenanigans for any deck that looked to go towards the later turns or work their way out there.
Yeah, I was looking at Scoundrel when building other decks in Wild, because a lot of the standard decks are running like Control Priest, and so I did have a look at it and I was like, is there any use for this, especially with the new N'Zoth? just because it's a bigger pirate. But yeah, I also really like the Tidal Surge that you mentioned. The Tidal Surge is actually really strong. I kind of dismissed it a little bit too quickly, I think. When I thought just Healing Rain was going to be strictly better, but then I tried Tidal Surge in a Shadowwalk deck, and I was really impressed with that card. I think that buff was super important. So yeah.
Yeah, Tidal Surge was one of the casualties of wanting to include Southsea Scoundrel, so I could definitely see the second copy going back in, and I would agree that in most cases it's like it is better than Healing Rain, because not only are you getting some healing off of it, but you're preventing repetitive damage from coming in over the course of future turns. So yeah, I think that card overperformed, but I ended up cutting it because I wanted to goof around.
Content. Cut it for the content. Makes sense.
Exactly.
And the final deck that we have, not a Shaman deck. Sorry to break the pattern here, but we have Dead Man's Hand Warrior, Frenzy Dead Man's Hand Warrior from Absolute. So I played this deck a lot on stream the other day and went pretty well with it. Had a really good time. I really like playing Dead Man's Hand decks. So the list is double Armor Vendor, double Eternium Rover, 2 Risky Skippers, 2 Shield Slams, double Town Crier, double Armor Smith, double Battle Rage, 2 Dead Man's Hands, 2 Rats, an Anchor, 2 Bloodsworn Mercenary, Barov, Outrider's Axe, 2 of, 2 Stone Maul Anchorman, a Kresh, the new turtle, and 2 Brutes with the Overlord Soulfang. So basically, this is running that same kind of Dead Man's Hand shell that people are very familiar with. It's just instead of running the Cold Light sort of win condition, we're looking at this Frenzy package where we have the Overlord Soulfang to bring back the Anchorman, and so that way you can like shuffle it in, play it, draw some cards. The next turn, Dead Man's Hand, shuffle it in, play it, draw some cards, and kind of just loop that endgame threat and board control. You can also like bring back Kresh and get a absolute ton of armor. So I had a really good time with this. The list felt very clean to me in terms of how it was built. So again, shout outs to Absolute for that. And yeah, I also had the chance to do some really sick Armor Smith Bloodsworn Mercenary plays, which were very fun. There was a Mozaki mage I played against where I managed to accumulate 80 armor, which was quite fun. Yeah, I really
did they kill
appreciate
you? That's the important question. Did they kill you through the
No,
ADR?
we really wanted to find out. Like, we were all super curious, but then I just ratted the Mozaki anyway.
Oh.
So it was like very anticlimactic.
Come on.
Yeah, I know, but a really fun take on Dead Man's Hand, and definitely like a very satisfying win condition, compared to the alternative like Cold Lights and Nazoth and things like that.
Itching to try a version like this, and this looks pretty clean. I haven't seen a lot of Bloodsworn Mercenaries, but like it makes sense in the deck, right? Like it gives you some flexibility in terms of what you want to do with it. It can, give you additional copies of even your frenzy minions if you want to like play towards a certain minion because you don't have necessarily certainty with them. So yeah, I like the idea. Or even like you said, just the Armor Smith, gain a bunch of armor, feels good.
Yeah, I've never really been a fan of like the Cold Oracle Dead Man's Hand, just because like I dislike the mill game plan, but this this doesn't mill the opponent, so like this seems like, and it also seems like a lot less clunky, right? A lot less combo pieces because you can tempo out the Anchormans and the Creshes like in the mid game, and so it probably just feels like a lot smoother. I was watching you play and I was like, yeah, this feels good to play. So I might actually have to become a cultist, for the first time in my life and play some Dead Man's Hand, because
they're always willing to take on more members. Don't worry, they're very welcoming.
It's good to hear.
By appearances, it looks like there are fewer cards that can kind of get stuck in hand, like brawls and that type of thing too. So it seems like less effort involved in paring down your hand in order to get the ideal Dead Man's Hand. You can just kind of play your cards until you're left with the good cards, and then play those cards repeatedly.
Yeah, definitely. It felt far less clunky and it felt a lot smoother. Whereas when I was playing Cold Light games, it often felt like I wasn't allowed to look at chat, and I was just like laser focused on the games, and it was just like sweating bullets trying to figure out what I was doing. This felt a lot smoother. Like I could just play out my nice pirate with the rush and just trade in, and there wasn't worrying about dumping the specific pieces as much. But it still had that really cool infinite Dead Man's Hand engine, which is very satisfying and a favorite for a lot of people.
All right, so 3 really, really cool decks for everybody to check out this week. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up for our 50th episode. It still blows my mind that we've gotten to 50. So I appreciate all of you guys that watch week after week. And of course, I appreciate Roffle and Corbett for joining us on this adventure. But yeah, so we've gotten to the end of the episode. I did promise information on the giveaway. So now that you guys have watched all the way to the end, down in the description below and probably in the pinned comment, there will be a link to the giveaway. All you got to do is click that link, fill out a few questions, just to prove that you watched the episode and get a little information from you guys. And you'll be entered into 2 giveaways for some wild pack bundles. So obviously free to enter, just a token of our appreciation for watching all of the episodes and supporting us on this journey. A little token of our appreciation. And speaking of, Roffle and Corbett, thank you again for hosting with me, and let the people in the audience know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at RoffleHS on Twitter and Instagram, and Roffle on Twitch and YouTube.
And guys, you can find me at Corbettgames on Twitter and Twitch, and you can also find me casting in this wild tournament that Meowth has hosted alongside Roffle. So yeah, this will be great. Really looking forward to all that stuff coming up, and hopefully it all goes well. Is it going to be over by the time the episode comes out? I don't know.
I hope so. I really hope that it doesn't go all the way until Sunday morning, because that would be insane.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, time zones. I lose my track sometimes.
What is time, Corbett? What is time?
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope you guys, enjoyed. I guess it will have happened, so I hope you guys enjoyed the tournament, and maybe we'll be looking to put on some more in the future. Depending on how that goes. So if you guys missed it and want to catch the VOD, that will be over on my Twitch channel. Speaking of, that's where you can find me streaming 4 days a week. And you can also find my content on Twitter and YouTube at GetMeOut as well. Yeah, we really appreciate you guys. I can't keep gushing about it. 50 episodes. Never thought we'd get here. And it's pretty awesome. And so thank you all for listening all the way to the end, week after week. We hope you guys have a good week post Steeler ban. So I hope you guys are playing all the fun stuff that you couldn't play because Steeler Warlock. And we will see you guys again next week, okay? Later.